All right, guys, welcome to your video lecture, vodcast, whatever you want to call this podcast, with me down in the corner down here, right down there. You're going to see different things from Chapter 7. We're basically just going to go through these first three things tonight in the chapter. So let's get started. You're reading the first night dealt with the rise of cultural nationalism, which is 184 to basically 191. And this was all about the idea of bringing in an identity to our country, and especially with education. Education was limited to the wealthy, to the elite, to the aristocrats. If you were not wealthy, you were not going to be able to be providing education to your family. There was no comprehensive public school system. Schooling was primarily by private institutions like the Harvards of the world. And those could pay, could go, but those who couldn't go. There was also new opportunities for women, the idea of the Republican motherhood, to train new generations that could not be ignorant. If a woman was going to stay home with their kids all day, they had to make sure that their kids were going to be educated in a proper way and know what is going on around them. So we had to give women had to start to be getting some type of education. There was no professional training for women for the most part, but they knew that they were there to be better wives and better mothers with the limited education that they were going to get. Indian and African Americans really struggled. They were trying to basically educate them in the white culture and reform tribes. There was very little schooling for both, and the literacy rate was very, very small. Higher education was not a public institution. It was all private contribution, and tuition was necessary. Students were mostly from prosperous families, like we talked about, like I said a little bit earlier. Moving into the medicine and science, this also took a huge leap forward with the new nation, especially with the idea most doctors learned from established practitioners. There wasn't really med schools set up at the time, but doctors often used dangerous and really useless treatments. Aspirations of the cultural aspirations in the new nation. And this is where we kind of start to see in our own language come up. We have Noah Webster with his American spelling book. You have Washington Irving writing about stories and plays of, what was the guy's name? Ichabod Crane and Rip Van Winkle. So we're starting to see similar ideas of what was going on in Europe. We wanted to have that identity with our artistry, our artistic and literacy beliefs in the United States as well. I'm going to move down to the Second Great Awakening. The Second Great Awakening really came from the first one, and the origin of it really came in 1790s from the efforts to fight spread of religious rationalism. By the 1800 awakening that began at Yale spread throughout the country and west to camp meetings by evangelical ministers produced with a religious frenzy. The Second Great Awakening called for individuals to readmit to God and Christ into a daily life, reject anything skeptical rationalism. New sects were rejected. New sects were rejected. New sects rejected predestination and combined piety with the belief of God as an active force whose grace achieved through our faith. There was a big part on Native Americans in dislocation, and defeats of the Revolution created a sense of crisis that led to a large religious fervor. Missionaries were active in the South and led to conversion. Go away. Bye-bye. Where am I at? Oh, Native American, sorry. I'll keep getting interrupted. Native American dislocation and defeats of the Revolution created a sense of crisis and led to religious fervor. Missionaries that were active in the South and led to conversion to Christian religions. In the North, Prophet Handsome Lake encouraged Christian missionaries and restoration of traditional Iroquois culture. So it's kind of a combination of the two now. Moving into the second parts of the reading, the stirrings of industrialism. Technology was growing. I mean, we were a very agrarian society, but we were getting more and more technology on a daily basis, on a yearly basis. American imported technological advances from England. The British government attempted to prevent the spread of their technology, but immigrants introduced new machines in America. Samuel Slater built the first mill in Rhode Island in 1790. And it was really the first factory in the United States. And you'll begin to see almost all the factories are taking place in the North. And in the South, it's dealing with agriculture. Eli Whitney really kind of got this whole thing started with his cotton gin in 1793, and the growth of the textile industry in England created great demand for cotton, and cotton gin allowed for easy separation of cotton seeds from the cotton, allowed a tremendous amount of cotton to be cleaned and sent all over the country and even all over the world. And this new business led slavery became more and more important than ever before. In the North, the cotton supply led northeastern entrepreneurs to create American textile industry, not until about the 1820s, 1830s. And as the North became increasingly industrial, the South was more firmly wedded to agriculture. Also, Eli Whitney's creation of the interchangeable parts invented during the quasi-war with France, adopted by other manufacturers and other complicated products. So now you could change out parts if something broken instead of just having to build a whole new machine. So moving on, also transportation became huge. If we're going to have all of this cotton being shipped all over the world, how are we going to get it there? So industrialization required transportation of raw materials to factories and finished goods to create a large domestic market for them. And the U.S. lacked a system. We didn't really have anything. We looked overseas trade, and Congress in 1789 passed tariff bills that favored American ships in American ports and simulated growth of domestic shipping. Improvements to interstate and interior transportation led to an improved river transportation system and the new steamship, Robert Fulton steamship. And the turnpike era really began in the late 1790s with corporate construction of turnpikes, but because they needed to turn a profit, they were generally short and only in densely populated areas. So there weren't any roads, just the densely populated areas that you could find something. Let's move forward here to the Federalist City and the people's president. So Jefferson as the president. Jefferson was a man who ended up hating the presidency in the end. But he was also very, very smart as a politician. He knew when he had to give in a little bit and knew when he needed to take a little bit, because he first started with a very, very strict interpretation of the Constitution, and over the course of time that changed into a more loose when he decided to purchase Louisiana from the French.